Hey, Michael Einer here. I've got a very special guest for this video. Tim Stallings of AlerStallings, an elder law firm located throughout Ohio, actually. And I wanted to bring Tim into the office and have a conversation for everybody to see because there's so much crossover between our practice areas, between Social Security and what you're doing. And we had a great conversation a couple weeks ago that I thought, wow, I just wish so many of my clients could hear this. And so this is their opportunity to kind of hear it spoken about again. Tim, why don't you just introduce yourself and the practice a little bit so people get a little bit of idea of who you are and what you do.
Sure. As Michael said, my name's Tim Stallings. I'm a certified elder law attorney, which means that really I practice elder law all day. It's kind of a new term. Elder law really is what I consider to be an expansive type of estate planning.
Okay.
It used to be everybody gets a will. And
So-
that was kind of it.
So now, I mean, because I've always wondered when people tell me they're an elder law attorney, I think, are they only helping old people? But really, you're helping people plan for getting older. Is that
Sure.
a better way of thinking about it?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, we call our planning for the 99%.
Okay.
Most of our clients are not, the 1%ers. They're hardworking, Ohioans who want to make sure that, if they, have any issues in the future, whether it's something, that happens in their 30s or 40s, a work injury or become unable to work, or if they've retired and they just want to make sure that they're doing things right and not leaving their spouse or their family a mess, we help them through that. There's several benefits that we work through.
So there's a big estate planning component, but you also do a lot of things with like planning for Medicare and
Sure.
Medicaid for people as they age. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Medicaid is really designed for people who have trouble paying for really expensive, which is getting more expensive
Right.
every year,
Right.
either medical costs or, if they find themselves in a position where they can't live at home and they're going to some type of residential facility, it's expensive. So that's where kind of we come in and help them figure out how to work.
And that's kind of what I thought was so interesting because realistically, and we'll put it out there, the services that you perform aren't inexpensive if you were to just look at the bill, but when you realize what it could save somebody in the long run, you have to think of Tim's work as a savings as opposed to an expense almost. Because, I might have told you this story, I might not have. After you and I had coffee a couple weeks ago, I came back and I was, telling one of my paralegals about the conversation we'd had. And I said, I've always thought that, an elder attorney, estate planning, my disability clients can't afford it. At the top end, if they're living just on a disability income, they're getting $2,600 a month. So to, spend a large chunk of money to hire an attorney to do an estate plan is probably not their first priority. But what my paralegal was telling me is she had a family member that did not plan properly for the aging process, and they were sick, which is how so many of our clients are. And what ended up happening is the family lost everything that they had because they didn't, make the investment and figure out the savings at the beginning to allow them to avoid kind of getting robbed by the government as they age. Can you talk about that a little bit and what happens and what clients of mine need to be thinking about when they're deciding whether or not, like I said, your services aren't inexpensive, but they can save so much.
Sure. When we are meeting with a client and kind of going over what their goals are and their concerns or their fears, and we talk about the assets, whether they're large or comparatively small, that's their nest egg. That's what they've worked hard for. That's what they've saved, and they never want it to go to the rest home. They never want it to go to the government. Medicaid rules are cruel. You're allowed to keep in Ohio a maximum of $2,000. So what does that mean? It means if somebody has $25,000, they have to spend down to $2,000. That's
Right.
almost everything that they have. So when we're discussing the benefits of doing planning, we talk about that because at the end of the day, most people will pay something to save a chunk of that money.
Right. And the most logical period of time is, most of our disability practice, and we get a lot of people approved on their initial applications as well, but certainly once somebody, if we have to go to court, which is where most hearings go, and we've got clients that routinely get back pay amounts of 25, 30, just a couple weeks ago a gentleman got over $100,000 in back pay on his claim, and had, it's strange for me to say now go spend $5,000 or $8,000 to hire an attorney to help you with this, but you could help them save most of that money that they got if they were to see it that way. Is that fair?
Yeah. Okay. The rules are the rules, and we have to work within them. And sometimes it takes, as you and your clients know, a lot of work to get to that final result that you want. It's not as simple as a one-page document. We're going through, and there's strategy involved to save that money.
One thing that I wanted to know about, and I don't know the answer to this, so you're going to educate me, is about if there's any special considerations that are going on in your mind if somebody sits down with you and in the initial consultation says, I'm receiving X amount of dollars in Social Security disability. Does that change how you plan for them? Is there anything that they need to be thinking about, or that?
So, well, there's really kind of a few different angles that we approach it, but I would imagine, and based on our previous discussions, oftentimes your clients are, they're sometimes struggling because of the amount of money that they receive. And if they are at a point in life where their parents are still living and their parents have a house and maybe a little bit of money, it's really as much about making sure that if their parents need care, that they can still get some help from their parents, because there's some rules that are really not very well known regarding the intersection of SSDI and Medicaid. In fact, if mom needs the rest home, she can actually transfer assets to a child who is a SSDI recipient, and that's a huge deal, because otherwise mom would have to spend it all down to $2,000.
Right.
That house that the child might be living in with mom, or that money that mom, is helping out, trying to make ends meet. Even if you're on SSDI, you have a family you're trying to support. The government recognizes that, and they'll actually allow mom to transfer assets and then go to the rest home and receive Medicaid herself. And that's where, we've had a lot of success, helping people who actually come to us because mom needs the nursing home. And then through the conversation, we discover one of the children is an SSDI recipient, and we can protect all of that family money and still benefit, that child.
One thing that I know, and you guys do a lot like we do with a lot of educational seminars.
Sure.
And one that I saw that you put on, I'm not going to ask you to go through the whole thing, I'm just wondering if you could give people a general overview. It might not be specific to disability recipients, but one's called The Three Big Bad Wolves of Estate Planning. Can you give us a little bit of a preview of that, in case maybe some of the viewers watching this would be interested in signing up for a seminar to learn more?
Absolutely. So the Big Bad Wolves is really what we view as the three biggest issues for an average Ohio person. We have offices throughout the state, so we do these not just in Cleveland, but in Findlay and Lima and Mansfield and some more rural areas. The Big Bad Wolves workshop is about 45 minutes. We introduce Jack and Jill. They're our average Ohio family, and then we talk about how the wolves would affect them. We talk about what happens if you didn't do anything and you pass away. Who gets your stuff? How do we decide? Then we talk about taxes. Are there any taxes that people might not know about that we want to make sure we minimize? We can't always eliminate them, but we like to minimize
Right.
them. And then we talk about down the line if they ever needed any long-term care. Because Forbes magazine says half of people who enter the rest home are out of money in 6 months. So we want to come up with a plan to preserve as much of that wealth as possible so it's not all spent on care.
You talked about, and this is kind of a big transition, but you talked about how you do these seminars all over the state. You guys actually have offices all over the state. We have a statewide practice as well.
Sure.
Where are your main bases? Where do you have outposts so that people can come and find you?
Well, so in the Northeast, we have an office in Independence. We have an office in Westlake. And then we have an office down just south of Akron, so between Akron and Canton. In other parts of the state, we have an office in Mansfield. We have an office in Findlay, Lima, Bell Fountain, which is where my business partner's from. Our main office, where our corporate staff is down in Dublin. And then we have an office in Delaware and one in Gahanna. So, Cleveland and Columbus are kind of the two big markets, but we try to be where people need us.
Okay. And I just kind of want to thank you for everything. I just kind of want to wrap up by saying if people want to sign up for one of those seminars, or they want to reach out to you, and we'll make sure to get this included. Tell us, how can people find you?
So our workshops are listed on our website. It's www.AlerStallings, AlerStallings.com. And on the left side, you'll see a tab for events, and when you click on events, you'll see our list for the state of Ohio. We normally have them out for the next few months listed at any given time. You can also always call us and ask if we're going to be around your neighborhood, and we have our whole list for the year.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with me and telling a little bit about what you do and why some of my clients might want to consider, making the investment in preserving some of their assets.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Finally, girl, the disability warriors, fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves.